Welcome to Little John's Yarns. Today, we're going to learn how to make this easy pillow cover created by using the Addi knitting machine. If you like my tutorials, please don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you're always up to date. This pillow is created so you can change your style anytime you want. Just remove the pillow cover and add a new one. This pillow cover will fit size pillows 12 by 12 to 16 by 16. If you would like to see some more Addi patterns, please go subscribe to JoJo Juju's page. She has some of the best Addi patterns around on YouTube. So please don't forget to check her out. We'll be using a 5mm crochet hook, and we're going to cast on with 6 rows of waste yarn and knit for 180 rows and cast off with 6 rows of waste yarn. Let's hop into it.
Of waste yarn. To start, make sure your panels clip into the up position for flat panels. You add your waste yarn, and I'll show you a quick review on how to put on your flat panel. We're going to begin by doing a back and forth cast on. So continue going back and forth until you make it to the other end, and I'll give you a close-up on what the other end of this row looks like. Okay, we have a couple hooks left over on our cast on, so continue going back and forth. And I'll show you how to end your cast on. Alright, we made it to the very last white hook. Your row is over when to the left of your white hook you're going to go under the red peg. That'll be the end of your row. So put your yarn back into the feeder and crank back slowly. When you crank back slowly, you make sure you secure all your stitches and none of them are dropped. We're going to work our way all the way back to the opposite white peg. Okay, we made it to the white peg. You know you made it to the very end of the row when to the right of your white peg, your yarn from the feeder drops below this little right peg. So when it goes, bam, that yarn just dropped below the red peg. That is the end of your row. So once again, pull your yarn taut and start going in the opposite direction. I'm going to show you again how to secure the end of your row so your stitches won't drop. You make it to that very last white peg. Make sure your strands drop below onto the double pegs onto this hook. Now crank your yarn that's coming from the feeder. This yarn is going to drop below this red peg. Bam! Did you see how it dropped below the red peg? And now that row is officially secure. Pull your yarn taut and let's start going in the opposite direction. Okay, I'm going to show you this row again because all these end flat panels are very difficult to do. We made it to the very end of that white peg. The yarn from the feeder is going to have to drop below this red peg here to complete your row. Here it goes, and bam! That yellow strand just dropped below the red peg, right to the right of it. We'll go back one more time. And make it to the very end. Make sure your work is all down at the bottom of the double pegs at the bottom of your red hook. Here we go. The yarn from your feeder is about to drop below this red peg and become secure. So drop it down, bam, and there you go, and we'll work our way back. Alright, we made it back to our other side, and now this is going to drop below the yellow peg, bam, this row is over. Next, I'm going to show you how to switch colors, but I'm going to give you a better angle. Okay, I cut my yarn. I'm going to pull it out the feeder. We're going to crank our work back, and we're going to stop right before the white peg. And let's insert the main yarn that you'll be using. This first row, make sure you crank slowly so you'll catch every single loop. You don't want any drop strands on your very first row. We made it to the end. Remember, at the end of the row, We make it to the left of your white peg, and once it drops below the red little hook, your row is secure. Bam, it dropped. And start back again. Alright, continue making your rows until you make it to the very end, and I'll pick up with you there. Okay, we completed all our rows, so what you do, open up your feeder and remove your yarn. I didn't cut mine, I usually leave it long until I figure out what I want to do with it, and I just toss it in between my work. And now it's time to change off and cast off with waste yarn. So once again, you add your work into the feeder. And continue to crank like you usually do. We are going to do a total of 5 rows of waste yarn to cast off. So complete your 5 rows of waste yarn and I'll meet you there. So pause your video. Okay, I completed my 5 rows and I cut my waste yarn, and all you have to do now is just crank. I like to flip mine back into a full panel so I can just circle around and crank off my work, and it'll come off as you go. So once your work is removed from your panel, we'll move on to the very next step. Next, you're going to have to grab your 4mm crochet hook because we're going to be crocheting across the top of your work. We're going to be starting on a cast off edge with the long tail end left. As you can see with the contrasting waste yarn, you can see the loops that we'll be working into, the tan ones that match our yarn. So insert your hook into the loop and pull up a stitch. Chain 1 and let's single crochet back into the same stitch. Let me zoom in so you can get a better view. We're going to be placing 1 single crochet in each stitch all the way across. Well, waste yarn loop. Single crochet. Next waste yarn loop. Single crochet. So you can pause your video here. Continue placing 1 single crochet in each one of your waste yarn loops all the way across, and I'll meet you at the other side. Once you make it to the other side, you can fasten off your work and remove your waste yarn. I got a lot of waste yarn. Alright, and make sure you're going to repeat the same exact thing on the opposite side by single crocheting across each one of your waste yarn loops, the tan ones, or whatever color that you're using. So pause your video here and I'll meet you when you're complete with your opposite side. Now we're going to begin by sectioning off our panel into completely different sections. And to do that, we're going to be counting the loops and the side stitches of our panel. If you look closely, you can see a little knot here, followed by a loop, followed by a knot, loop, knot. I'll insert a picture now so you can see at a better view exactly what I'm talking about. In this picture, you'll see a loop followed by a knot followed by another loop. We'll be working into exactly the individual loops. Let's start putting our stitch markers. Be careful with the very first one. Not to confuse the side with your very first single crochet, so we won't count that stitch. So let's count over 5. 1, 2, skip the knots, 3, 4, and 5. You'll place a stitch marker on the 5th one. And for your next space, we're going to place a stitch marker 20 stitches from this one. So you count 1, 2, 3, 4. I already counted to 20. And place your stitch marker on the 20th space. And we're going to repeat the same thing for here. We're going to place a stitch marker 5 loops up. And from that one, we're going to place another stitch marker 20 loops up. And we're going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side. Place a stitch marker 5 loops up, followed by a stitch marker 20 loops up, and the same thing on the opposing side. 5 loops up and 20 loops up. This is exactly how your panel should be sectioned off with your stitch markers. Once you have all your stitch markers in, make sure your work is placed right side up but we're actually going to be stitching it together on the wrong side. So once you have it the right side up, we're going to place the very first fold at the second stitch marker. It's kind of hard to see, here it is, because your work's all rolly. We're going to insert your hook into that very first loop. And also, we're going to insert it into the loop right next to it, behind it. Now you can remove your stitch marker. And now we're going to attach our yarn. We're going to be slip stitching all the way across your work. Okay, chain to secure your work. Let me zoom in so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Alright, remember the loops that I told you about before? That's what we'll be working into. So go through the front. You see the loop? Not the knot, but the loop. And go through the loop in the back. And slip stitch. The loop through the front. And the loop through the back. Slip stitch. As simple as that. One more time. That loop through the front, loop through the back, slip stitch. Continue placing slip stitches all the way across your work until you make it to your stitch marker. Stop right before the loop, right before your stitch marker. So pause your video here and I'll meet you at this section. We made it to the stitch right before the stitch marker. So what we're going to do now, you can remove your waste yarn, your scrap marker, and we're going to fold your work in half from the other end. You remember where we marked off those 5 stitches? We're going to be working into those 5 loops. Remember that very first stitch, let me see if I can give you a better angle. Don't confuse it with the loop. It's actually a single crochet. Can you see it? This one's a single crochet. We're going to be working into these loops. So lay your work right across. We're going to be going into the front loop of your opposite end, in through the front loop, your middle piece, in through the middle loop, and your back piece, in through the back loop. And we're going to slip through, stitch you all 3. Simple as that. We're going to repeat. Front loop, middle loop, and back loop. Slip stitch. Once again, front loop, middle loop, back loop, slip stitch. So we'll continue working those together since there's not too many of them. Front, back, middle, back. And here is your last stitch you're working into. Can't get it undone. There you go. Back, front, middle, back. And those are your 5 loops. So now all you have to do is work into the front and the back now. Front and back slip stitch. You no longer have those 3 pieces. Front, back, slip stitch. There we created this little overhang flap. So continue placing slip stitches all the way to the other end and I'll meet you there. Once you make it to the other side, you can fasten off your work. And you're just going to repeat the same exact thing to your opposite edge by placing slip stitches all the way across, then overlapping at your 5 loop spaces, then slip stitching all the way around to the other end. So pause your video here and complete the same exact thing that you did to the other side. And here you go, and your pillow's all done. I do suggest using a little Velcro tab, maybe putting right here so you can close off your pillow, because due to the nature of the Addi and the flat panel, you will get a roll. So a little Velcro strip would help, but I didn't have any in my stash, so you're just going to have to use your imagination.
If you like this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And check out my other crochet home decor projects. Okay guys, I'll see you on the next tutorial.